Generally, people feel my idea to be little wired actually because they think to understand parallelism, to understand something like parallel stream or something like that, we need to have a lot of prerequisite to understand. But that is not the case. Whereas I feel that understanding concurrency and understanding all the different states and how we should sequence the data, those things are much more tougher than understanding parallelism. First, I will take you to a bit of journey that how things has improved over the time. Okay, and we will talk about more of parallelism, and then after parallelism, I will come on concurrency. But yeah, before covering any of these topics, I will tell you definitely what is the difference between them. And basic difference is that parallelism is easier and concurrency is quite tough. Okay, so but we will understand into the detail. Okay, so don't go into these things. Okay, so what I want to explain you is that where the future is trending. This is made by Cornell University, and you can see multiple things here. Okay, so what is one of the things which I want to take you is that the number of cores over the time, that how the number of core have been increased and how the frequency of the processor have been increased and what is the power that have been increased. Okay, so if you consider from the older time to the newer time, you can see that we have increased number of cores. So there was a time when we are running with one core for a very very long time, and then in fact even we were started building supercomputers and all also with a intense CPU power, but not with the different cores. Okay, so this is how things were going, and then suddenly we realized that we can add multiple cores. Okay, uh, any one of you can tell me here what is the difference between adding a different CPU line and adding a different core? So what is the basic difference of having more cores and having more processor? So what is the difference? Or the cores and the processor are the same thing?
I think when we have multiple cores, we can rebuild the cache. That can happen, but in different processors altogether, that's a very expensive operation. Like for context switching, perhaps what I think in like a multi-core processor, that is still to a certain extent possible. But making sure that the cache build and everything is synchronized across different CPUs is a very, very expensive operation. I guess that could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, basically, so what I would like to say is that basically in a multi-core system, all the cores are close to each other. Uh, as in they share the same L1, L2, L3 caches, and whereas in multiple processors, you'll have this problem of cache coherence, wherein you'll still have that problem in multi-core, but to a lower extent, and the time, the circuit to the cache would be much shorter. So basically, the cores and the memory would be sitting quite closer to each other.
Yeah, so I think Anupam, you were telling that. So there are good answers, and in between the talk, we will definitely touch upon that also. That how actually the cache impacts and how the bus line impacts, and you need to also aware with the different core architectures like uh, these things are very important if someone is doing system engineering or even the language development or even the application development. You need to aware that how is the NUMA processor work. Like NUMA is non-uniform memory access. Okay, there the CPU lines are connected totally different than the normal CPU lines connection. Okay, so we will see that may not be today, but definitely we will see in the course of our action. Okay, so what happens that we all know that we started increasing the core. So we went from one core to two core to three, not three to four cores, and then 8 cores, and then 16 cores, 32 cores. But after, if you will see like 32 cores, 64 cores, in fact, when I was in Sun Microsystem, we had like the Niagara machine. So Niagara 2 was 64 core machine. Okay. But do you think that we are adding cores after that, like after 32-bit or 64 bits, we are adding many cores to the hardware? I mean, why it has happened? Okay, so we are like doing good. We are just keep increasing the core, and we are thinking like, okay, if the core has the possibility to do parallel computing, we are good. I mean, we can just keep dividing by half if 4 cores, and then if we are moving from 4 core to 8 core, we are good to reduce the time by half ideally, and then so on. But then what is the issue that came out? So why typically you are seeing this graph till 2015 actually, where cores are still increasing, but you will see after a certain amount of time, okay, the cores are not that much increasing actually. If you will see from last few years, the CPU or the kind of server machines, we are not increasing the core. Definitely we are started increasing for the mobiles and for the small devices like the pads and all. So most of the mobiles used to be single core, but now they are like dual core or quadra core. Okay, but for the bigger systems, we are not increasing the core anywhere. Okay, so this is one question which I want to ask. And second question which I want to ask, that why we cannot increase the CPU intensity? I mean, CPU, like it went 2.4 gigahertz CPU, 2.7 gigahertz CPU. Can't we increase just the CPU processing? So when you're seeing 2.4 gigahertz CPU, that means that it can do a number of instructions which can be found from the gigahertz in per second time. Okay. So that is what the frequency line is. So you can see the frequency line is going a little bit straighter, the green line, right here, the green line. Okay. So this is another question which I want to impose you, that why the frequency of the processor, or why the gigahertz of the processor, we cannot keep increasing. I mean, what is the limitation there? And the second thing is that why we are limiting the number of cores, why we cannot increasing the number of cores as like how we were like 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 128 and 264. What is the problem?
Yeah, the frequency, I think so, cannot be increased because after a certain level, there's the signal to noise ratio. So if you increase that frequency, then the signal to noise ratio would increase, which will lead to the lowering of the voltage. But when you lower the voltage, then the issue is that you cannot achieve that frequency. So it's a kind of a catch-22 situation. And for the core part, I'm not sure I know that because in some GPUs, not in CPUs, I've seen thousands of core. So maybe in CPU there's a restriction.
Right. Okay.
Another reason will be that heat issue.
Right. Okay. So please go ahead.
I would like to add, maybe it's my thinking that if we are increasing the cores, means more and more cores, there might be overhead to sum up the overall processed output. So that overhead might be sacrificing or compromising the overall output. So just to increase the cores may not be achieving the purpose. To parallel means simply what I would like to add here. If we are simply increasing the core, probably to sum up the complete output, it will be consuming more overheads. Because of that, performance will be degraded. And regarding that frequency thing, so the form factor of the CPU definitely will increase if we will run the same thing on same with the more frequency. So probably the heat issue will definitely come on in that case. So this is what I was thinking about it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for adding the point. Actually, collaborating all the points, I think we have covered most of the things. So I will just reiterate it. Increasing frequency is a limit. Why? Because one of us have already explained that it creates a lot of noise, and more than noise, it creates a power dissipation. Okay, so if I will continuously keep increasing the gigahertz frequency or the megahertz frequency, you will reach to a point when your processor will start burning, it will start producing heat. Okay, So you can see the power, typical power in the watt and the frequency both follow a similar kind of curve. If you can see the curve which is in green in line and then the curve which is kind of brownish in the line downside. So frequency is limited. Frequency is limited because speed of light is limit. I mean, you cannot go beyond that. Okay. So you are binded not to increase the frequency outside the kind of the law of physics. Okay. So you just cannot keep increasing the frequency. Okay. Definitely you can increase the frequency up to a certain period, which we have already done, and definitely increasing the frequency will cost you higher in the processor. Okay, so the processor cost will also go high. Now number of cores, very good point in the middle it has been added that in the GPU we see more number of cores, but actually in the CPU we are not seeing. Okay. Definitely I'll cover this point in the middle of the talk, but right now you can just understand that most of the applications, most of the softwares, most of the languages even are not ready or not good enough to handle the number of cores. Okay, so it is not a limitation from the hardware side, but it is a limitation from the software side. Okay, that probably software cannot leverage the number of cores which a hardware can provide you. Okay, that has multiple limitations. We will definitely discuss few of the limitations, but if Intel guys want, they can give you 100 cores, but sorry to say that as a software engineer you cannot really write a code which can use actually 100 of the cores. Okay, so yes, we have kind of thresholding into the number of core also. The graph is going quite it's thresholding, it's not increasing anymore. So we are looking for other kind of solutions, like we are looking for the caches to increase. Okay, in the last I will say 1 decade actually, cache has taken a very big market, and most of you know, like L1 cache, L2 cache, L3 cache, and then there are multiple level of cache. Processor provides a cache at the processor level, and then outside CPU you have another cache, and then many times RAM also deal lot of caches, and all are connected with the bus lines, and even engineers started providing some kind of cache on the software side also. Okay, so this cache is very good actually. It do a lot of work, but it increased the complication by a very heavy amount. Okay, it just look good from the hardware perspective that okay, I am providing you cache, get the things which you want to use into the cache, but it's not so easy. Okay, it's not so easy. In fact, if few of us know about the issue, that the vulnerability that Google has raised few years before, not few years, I think 1-2 years before, about the Spectra and the meltdown. Okay, that was precisely this issue. If you know that there was a earthquake into the international market, even the shares have went down, and you know that most of the processors, the AMDs and Intels, actually they have fixed their processing unit to handle the Spectre and meltdown, which actually was security threat raised by the Google, and that is precisely because the issues with the cache actually. Okay, so what happens is that many of the times we go with the aggressive calculation. So what is the aggressive calculation means? If there is something which is going to a if and else block, we will calculate the if thing also, and we will calculate the else thing also, and we will cache it both, because we want to use our cache, right? So you just ask me, okay, what is in the if, I'll just provide you. Okay, it's like a ready-made food. If you're coming into the else code, I'll just provide you. I am not going to do the processing inside the if else, because I know that you are going to enter into the if, or you are going to enter into the else. But now what happens that you enter into the if, okay, I will flush out the else content. Okay, but now as per the threads that was into the Spectre and the meltdown, they say that your data when inside the cache, your else data inside the cache, actually if I exactly know the processing unit and the processing time, I can take the secure data also from your cache and I can read that, and that can have some information. It can have your transaction ID, it can have your password, it can have your lot of things. Okay. So this kind of aggressive optimization was the issue which was kind of exposed in Spectre and Meltdown. In fact, Meltdown was different thing. It was like application to application issue. Okay, like the boundary is Meltdown, because when you are two different applications can use the same cache and a lot of things were there. Anyway, so they really don't have any test unit or kind of a solid case to provide it, but they definitely have a POC to show that this issue can occur anytime. Okay, and you can definitely go and read the complete document on Spectre and Meltdown. Okay, and in fact, you should also read the Spectre and Meltdown and how this vulnerability with the latest system. And you can also read how the processors and the operating system has fixed the issue. Okay, so even the patches will be available. Okay, so you can see like it has been passed by all the operating system. It has been passed by all the hardwares. Okay, and I am just trying to explain you that what was the concept that it's not only that much what I have explained you, but I have just told you the tip of the iceberg. Okay, you can go deep and you can look into the issue. So the thing is that cache has provided a lot of good information, a lot of good optimization to us, but as a software engineer, we need to be too careful to use the cache. And unfortunately, as a language developer, we need to use it more carefully. Okay, so today I will get you into the parallelism. Okay, and I was planning something else actually for this presentation, and you can see even my slides were ready. I already started with kind of Java threading and all, but then I thought like let's first deal with the parallelism and then we will come into the concurrency. Okay, because concurrency is little bit tougher concept and it's a much vague concept than parallelism. Okay, so let's start the discussion. This slide say that software followed the hardware. Look how the hardware has evolved, like that the software has evolved. Okay, so first hardware used to deal with like single processing, and then we just want to do something like kind of removing one process and putting another process, or we used to kind of like mutex and locks and threads. So these basic functionality is there in JDK1. Okay, then JDK 5 has a major package change where we came with a lot of concurrency packages. We came with things like how the blocking queue work, how the latches work, how the thread pool work. Okay, so definitely people had a lot of problem in writing their own kind of thread structure, the own locks, the own mutex. Okay, so JDK 5 provide a very good package for them to use it. Then definitely we reached to JDK 7 and we have inserted something called fork and join framework, which we will discuss a little bit in detail. And JDK 8 being increasing into the core now, we have to do parallel processing now, because that is the only possibility for us to leverage all the cores. So in JDK 8, you got parallel stream where you really don't have to say anything. You just have to say sum all the elements of the array or sum all the numbers and dot parallel. Okay, so it can automatically understand how to do it. Okay, it will magically fix out everything. Okay, so these slides generally say that how software has evolved with the hardware. Now this what is parallelism? Okay, so you should understand the basic difference between concurrency and parallelism. Concurrency means doing multiple jobs, one after another, one at the same time when another is doing. Okay, a better example I generally give you is that garbage collector. So many garbage collector actually can run when your application is also running. Okay, so that is called concurrency. Okay, so I have garbage collector threads, I have application threads, both are running concurrently. Wherever in parallelism you see that I just divide my task into subtasks and I throw it to all the cores. Okay, and I tell guys get it done as fast as possible. Okay, so What is the use of parallelism? The parallelism use is not kind of asynchronous thing. It is not kind of concurrency thing, kind of locking thing. The only work of this is to divide the job into subtasks and get the result as fast as possible. Okay. If you are not giving me the result faster, then just drop the idea of parallelism. It's as useless as nothing. I mean, just go for the sequential one. Okay. So now there are a lot of questions that what is my data set that I should look for the parallelism. If I'm adding 10 elements in an array, I should use parallelism. I should use my 4 or 8 cores, which is available on the machine. Or should I use for like 1 million element, 1 billion element, 50 billion element? At what time I should start looking for the parallelism? So those ideas we will discuss here, okay? But the golden rule is that you need to analyze, you need to implement, you need to test, and then you need to repeat it, okay? You have to continuously repeat your process of analyzing and implementing, okay? There is no other golden rule, okay? I cannot just say that a code which is running very nice parallelism on my server will run on your server also, okay? It totally depend upon what is the data structure you are making, what is the data elements you have, and a lot of other things, okay? So yeah, this picture, I have shown some of the parallelism. So do parallelism go with some kind of overhead than the sequential operation? The parallelism overhead is always there, okay, because when you are breaking your task and you are doing different kind of operations on different machine, then it is not so simple. I mean, there is someone required to break your task, and then definitely you can do work in parallel, and then someone actually is required to combine the task also. I mean, you need to combine your results, right? So one core you have done some addition, second core has done some addition, third core has done some addition, but how someone will combine the results? So something is required, okay? So a lot of management is required. So rather than just solving the problem, I need decomposition of problem, I need launching task, managing task, waiting for the completion, and combining of results. Okay, there are multiple things which is definitely a overhead than just solving a problem. When you are doing a sequential computation, what you do? You just solve the problem. But when you are doing parallel computation, you are doing solving the problem plus lot of extra work, okay? So this slide is fine. Now I will show you some data flow dependency. Don't get confused with this G1, G2 and all. I'll explain you what it is actually. What kind of data flow dependency can give you parallelism? What kind of data flow dependency can block the parallelism? Okay, so it's always not a wonderful idea to break your task into the parallel subtask. Sometimes your code is not written to break into the parallel tasks or the subtask. Okay, so I am considering a problem where g of n is actually dependent of g of n minus 1, right? So what is the case here is that your next run, your next iteration is actually dependent on the last iteration. Okay, so I need to get the result from the last iteration, and then I should feed that into the next run. So this is how it looks like, that G3 needs G2, G2 needs G1, and G1 needs G0. Okay. So can any one of you tell me that is it a good idea to apply a parallel theory or subtask theory here?
No.
Okay, please explain.
Because there is no part where we can separately process any function. Like if G3 is we are calculating, we need G2. So we cannot independently calculate all the functions, right? So there is a dependency on each and every function to other functions. So it will be better to just go with the series computation.
So basically every task will be keep waiting for the previous task to complete.
Right. So you all got it actually. So nothing to explain here. So this is a typical iterative problem, what you basically run into your for loop also. So you know the older for loop, like I equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. You do some operation, okay, and you actually make your upcoming operation dependent upon the last operation, and the time you have done that, we will understand that what kind of anti-pattern it create actually. People who know patterns, they must be knowing what is anti-pattern, and we will see that what are the issues that comes. Okay, so this kind of data set actually is not good for the parallelism. Okay, so far so good. Let's get this. Now I have a better question for you, and I have a tougher question for you. Now what is happening that Gn is actually dependent of function of n plus g of n minus 1. Okay, so it's again a kind of recursive call. So G2 will make G1 plus F2, and G1 will make G0 plus F1, and G0 will make F0. Okay, now F1, F2, F0 will be get dissolved by the value of F0, because I have set a conditional ending condition that G0 is equal to F0. Okay, so now the graph looks something like what I have made on the right hand side. It's a tree structure. Okay, so now can you tell me that I can exploit some kind of parallelism here, or still there are some issues?
You can compute the values of F1 and F2 and wait for G1 and G0 to complete.
Right.
So we will have a little bit of parallelism, but still we have a dependency that the for the what to say, like till the time you complete G1 and G0, you will have the results of F1 and F2 available with you.
I think you got the point. It's a very well point, and what you have said is totally correct. So what is this, that this is not an ideal example of parallelism, but this is a better example than the last one. Okay, here I can exploit a little bit of parallelism. Okay, though I cannot say that I can fully explain the I can fully apply the parallelism, but I can exploit a bit of parallelism. Okay, so this is just, I am showing you some of the cases, right, where the parallelism can be applied, it cannot be applied. So it is not like if I'm writing a stream or I'm writing some kind of parallel code, I should just say that dot parallel. No. It is not as simple as that. I need to explain and analyze a lot of things before applying. I will in fact show you some of the code demo also, that if I will just say dot parallel, actually the performance will way worse than the normal execution. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, so what I will do is that in this class we will just take a normal array addition. Okay, so we will try to add all the elements of the array. Okay, and we will see that how we can actually run it into the sequential approach, and is it possible to get a parallel approach for the same. Okay, so someone will tell me, okay, in the interview, can you add all the elements of array? I will say definitely. I will just say int sum equal to 0, and for the complete loop of array, sum equal to sum plus I, and return sum. Life was good, everything was fine till we were not greedy. And I think I should not say int sum, actually I should say something better like long and all, because if the elements are too much, maybe it will go beyond the range of int. Okay, so that's fine. So as we became more greedy, we said that no, this is not a good way. Okay, because adding all the elements of an array, I think I have so many processors lying with me, so many cores lying with me. Can we do something better? So I said, okay, I have heard about concurrency, I have heard about synchronization. So what I will do is that I will break my array into two parts, and I will give one thread to do one computation and another thread to do another computation, and I will just apply a synchronization block, right? Okay, so I have written need to be atomic. Okay, that's just the synchronization. We will discuss synchronization in detail, but I always give a get confused while giving the presentation that I should talk this first or I should talk that first. But anyway, now what is happening? The first element, the first half is getting computed in the first one, and the second half is getting computed in the second one. We will just throw it into the two different threads, and we are done. We are good. So, do you see any problem in this, or our code is little bit awesome than the first one? What do you say?
Problem is we need to know when the two threads are complete and join the result then.
I think it's a bit better than the first approach because the two paths can be assigned to two different parallel processes.
Okay.
Is it what you are talking about is the sum variable used in both the or loops? Will that cause a synchronization issue?
Yeah, please go ahead. Keep throwing your ideas. Actually, you are very close.
Yeah, I also think
So I need to understand that. I just need to understand that this code is better than the previous one or not.
It's
No.
better because it's additional operation only. So even two parallel process sharing a single variable sum is addition problems. Addition sum is okay, so it's not a problem. But when we are going for other operations, there if you are sharing a single variable, that time we face the problem. So here addition operations are no problem.
By the way, I think it depends on the array size.
Array size is huge.
So the issue that I feel is that so every operation at every loop we are doing this addition. So if we could do that at the end, then we don't have any sharing between the threads. Only that sharing would happen only at the end rather than at every iteration of the loop. So this getting it from the cache and then invalidating the cache because the value has changed probably will cause more overhead rather than helping.
Okay.
This addition is not an atomic operation.
I will make it atomic by using synchronization. So a synchronization block is actually makes things atomic. You can just understand like that. That's why I said need to be atomic, means I will just put a synchronization over it. Okay.
Actually, synchronization will not make it better. If we have two separate variables, which will where we can add the sum of the half of the array which we are doing it here, then I think it would be better. Now instead we are using one single variable. I think every time it gets stuck.
Yeah.
It might not be better. That's my thought.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the threads will be blocked because the sum is released, right? You're sharing the variable now.
Okay. So yes, you guys have said all the right points with a very polite way, but actually what I should have made the point that this code will actually sucks. It totally sucks. And you have already explained the reason for that, because you are doing things for the good, but actually you are breaking the very basic law of concurrency or very basic law of parallelism. I will explain you what it is. So the second code will work much slower than the first one. Okay. The idea is that sum is a common variable and it's a shared variable. Okay. So the first loop will always block the second loop and the second loop will block the first loop because you are running a shared variable. Okay. So it always need to lock, and the context switching will be so high, actually so high, that if you will run these two codes, okay, probably I feel like maybe 10 times slower than the first if you are giving a good amount of numbers into the array, maybe 10 to 15 times slower. Okay, so why this has happened you understood, but there is a basic behind it. Okay, so for explaining you that, what I will do is that I will stop sharing my screen. and I will show you my face, and now you can see me. I will show you this book. So you need to go and read this book. Okay, this is called Java Concurrency in Practice. Okay, this is kind of a very good book. And now if you will come to the very fundamental of this book. Okay, I think you all can see this. You need to read something this. Okay, I will read it for you. It says that if multiple thread access the same mutable state variable without appropriate synchronization, your program is broken. So that we know that our program is broken. There are 3 ways to fix it. The number 1, do not share the state variable across thread. And this number 1, number 2, number 3 is as per the priority. Okay, so don't mix that. Number 2, make the state variable immutable if possible. Number 3, use synchronization whenever accessing the state variable. Okay, so what I have done is that I have applied rule number 3 at first place. Okay, so now let's get back to the problem and try to see that we can solve it into a better way or not. Okay, here it goes, and here we are. So what we have done is that to solve the this problem of threading, we use the synchronization wherever access of the state variable, which is the last rule as per the problem. So yes, this is what it is written into the book. The book has written by some noble person. The right approach in the order is that first don't share, then second don't mutate, and the third is that coordinate access. Okay, coordinate access is actually called synchronization, means we will make the operation atomic. So what ideally you should have done, actually you should have done nothing. You should have just created a left variable and the right variable. Okay, and I should have given half of the array to the left variable and half of the array to the right variable. Okay, so now I am calling 2 threads. The first thread will keep running and it will run without even intervening the second thread, and it will get the results into the left, and the other thread will keep getting the results of the right, and it will just put the results into the right, and I don't have to do anything. I should just say return left plus right. Okay, so definitely when both the threads will end, you have to do the join, and then you will get the left and the right way. Now this is a good solution. This is fairly a better solution. Any one of you disagree that this solution also have some problem?
Yeah, basically, how would you know that both the threads are completed?
That's a very good question, because in the array I can get to know that, because we are doing addition. Addition is an atomic operation, so I know that sum is actually 1 instruction per unit. So I know that if there are 20,000, 10,000, then 10,000 instructions will go into the left, 10,000 instructions will go right. But your question is perfectly valid, that there can be a complex thing, or there can be a non-uniform kind of additions. Okay, so
No, Vaibhav, my question is basically, let's say the first thread, thread 1, goes and does the addition for 10,000, while the thread 2 is only at, let's say, 8,000 additions it has done. So we'll have to synchronize that both the threads are completed, then only we return left and right.
Correct. Very good point. Actually, so that is done by, if you know, it's done by the join method. So you just have to call join on both the threads. Okay. So when you will join on both the threads, actually, it means that you have to wait for the results. And this is again a problem. Okay. And I will explain you detail that how this problem can be solved in another way. So what you have actually say is that we say, work sharing algorithm. Okay, so there is the threads basically work on 2 kind of algorithm. There is something called work sharing algorithm, and there is something called work stealing algorithm. We will discuss both in next few slides. So you want me to explain it now, or we will go a little ahead? We will go a little down. Okay, and then we will come back. Okay, that what was the problem? As you have already explained the problem, that it is possible that one thread has finished the work and then it has to wait for the second thread to finish the work. Okay, and then only the join will work. Okay, but you can take it that join guarantees that the both thread has finished the work and then only it will return you the value. Okay, because the thread joins work into the synchronous way, they don't work into the asynchronous async way. Okay, so that is guaranteed. So before going into your problem, which is kind of a secondary problem, I have much primary problem. The problem is that why 2 division? Okay, say like I have 4 cores or I have 8 cores, then 2 division is not good enough for me. So I should split it further. What I should do? So I need a kind of general solution. I need kind of a more generic solution for this. So what do you think can be a generic solution? So let's look for a generic solution. What is a generic solution? So this is the pseudocode of generic solution, which I have taken from, I think I have taken from JLS only, which say that solve the problem, and till you don't believe that sequential operation is better than the parallel operation, keep breaking it into the left and the right. Okay, and what is your terminating condition of the left and right? When you think that sequential solution is better than the parallel solution. Okay, that is my break. So what is just made that if you have 10,000 element, I will break into 5,000, 5,000. I will go ahead and break into 2,500, 2,500. Then I'll make into 1250. Then I'll make into 625. Then I will say, no, I think after 625, if I'll break further, probably the sequential is much faster than the parallel operation. Okay, because we know that whenever we are breaking things for the parallel, there is a different cost associated with it. So knowing that factor, we will say, okay guys, let's stop on 625, get 625 element added into the sequential way, and then start traversing your tree back, like how you do it in the recursion. And then you have to keep calling the combine method, which will just keep adding the left and the right. So this is a kind of generic pseudocode for the generic solution. Any questions? I know there will be some questions, but still I will be good to hear the question.
So how do you arrive at the 625 value?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Next. Okay, so
won't the recursiveness of this cause problems for parallelism?
Parallelism always comes with a cost. Yes, if you are talking of the memory intense cost, definitely when you are doing some parallel or the recursive computation, it will be more memory intense than the sequential operation. Point noted.
I think this is something similar to how we solve the sorting problem as well. Like there are a different sorting algorithm. I think merge sort will perform only if the number of records in the array is greater than certain number of elements. If anything, if the size is arrived basically based on evaluating the performance of multiple runs.
Exactly. So most of the sorting problem you solve like this, and the only difference is that in the sorting problem you go till the end of the leaf. That means when your one element is left. But here you are not reaching to the leaf. You are reaching to a place where you are saying the sequential operation will benefit now. Okay, so if the sequential operation is more beneficial to me, I will just stop my parallel breaking of the subtask. And the question has been raised that how you will reach to that point. Yes.
Hi Vaibhav, how this invoke in parallel will work basically? Will it use internal thread pool, or will every time like create a new thread for every solve that you are calling from inside?
Okay, that's a very good question again, that how it actually do the work. So I will come back to that how it looks, number of processor, how it creates the thread, everything. Okay, so there are 2-3 questions. Okay, so I was expecting kind of all the questions before, that how you understand that now sequential operation is better, how you will understand that how many threads to create and how the pool has been done. all these questions. Anything else?
There's
So
one more
Vaibhav, I
thing.
think
Go
so if
ahead.
I may, I think yeah, thanks. The extract, left off, and write off is all like is a recursion, right? So is there a limit on the stack, like how far the method call would go on like that? So one method calling the other, the stack will get filled, right, at some point. So what is the maximum threshold wherein I should be deciding, right? Like how far should I be splitting it, and the recursion, is there any limit should we think
Yes.
of?
So again, a good question. Stack always have a limitation, and that limitation we can set it with stack size in Java. But definitely, because we are actually breaking it into the half, so it will really not hit your minimum stack size. But if your break is too much, or if I should have went till the last element, definitely your stack should have went out of memory. But here you see that what is my breaking condition? Is the breaking condition the end of the element, the last two element? No, it is the point where I will say sequential run is much better than the parallel runs. Okay, so like I have given you the example, say like if I will be having a 1 billion element, I can definitely tell you that going lesser than 15,000 or 20,000 element, okay, the parallel execution will work much faster than the sequential operation will work much faster than the parallel execution. I have a formula there down 2 slides down, and that formula is given by Intel processor. So they claim that formula, we will see that. Okay, so basically I'll move ahead, and we have just noted down all the problems, and there are a lot of kind of curiosity that how this pseudocode works. Okay, now this pseudocode we have implemented in JDK 7, and we said that this is called something called fork and join framework. Okay, there are 3 things to know about fork and join framework. That fork and join framework work on kind of subtask creation. It works on divide and conquer model, and it also works on something called work stealing algorithm. So this is the answer of the first question that someone have raised, that can I need to stop my thread till the second thread will not finish the work? Kind of not if you are using work stealing algorithm. So I will suggest you to go and read detail of work stealing algorithm. The little bit I will definitely explain you. Where you will definitely get a white paper, which is boring to read, but this you can read it, and you will have a total white paper on the work and stealing algorithm. I think it will be definitely put somewhere into the wiki page. Okay, so what work stealing algorithm do is very similar. You must have understood from the name. So you will have different pools, and different thread will be working from different pool. When a thread, the smart thread, it will finish the work faster. It will just go and steal the work from the other thread. Okay, so it don't work onto the work sharing algorithm. Work sharing algorithm say that I will share all the work to you guys. You do this, you do this, you do that. Okay. Now I have finished my work. I am waiting for the other threads also to finish the work. These guys are not finishing the work. I am just waiting. You know the thread.wait state. Okay, because in the end there is a join call, and join call say that all the 3 thread work need to be finished. Then only I can join it. Okay, so work stealing will see that my thread pool work is over. I will go and I will take the work from other thread pool. If I am done with that, I will go and take from other. So it all sounds very good actually, but it is not as easy as what it sounds. Okay, so there are a lot of background complication for this also, that when you should think like you can jockey your work, or jockey, you understand, jockey means moving from one thread pool to another thread pool. Okay, I mean you can think like there are 2 lines you are standing into the bank, and suddenly you realize that, oh, second line looks little smaller, and then you move from one line to another line, right? So is that your movement is good? You can't say always. Okay, so you can there are a lot of background work that works that goes into the work stealing algorithm, but we have seen that kind of asynchronous tasks have kind of different instruction intense task, actually the work stealing algorithm works much better than work sharing algorithm. Okay. So this was the answer, that what will happen if my thread will finish the work faster and then it has to wait for the second thread to finish the work. If my thread will finish the work faster, my thread is actually he is a stealer. He can go and he can just steal the work from another thread. Okay.
So, Vaibhav, what is the term that you use? Jockey.
Jockeying, yeah, jockeying is not only the company, so you should look for jockeying. Okay, jockeying. So yeah, it will tell you a lot of things, like a struggle to make yourself gain or achieved by something. Okay, so generally it means that when you think that I should just jump to the another pool. Okay, that is what the jockeying is. So this is a technical aspect. This generally a lot of people use in this word in algorithm, where when I have given you example, right? You are into the 2 queue. You have to move from one queue to another queue. Okay. So this is how the work stealing algorithm work. If my portion of work is small enough, do the work directly. Else split my work into 2 pieces, invoke the 2 pieces and wait for the results. Okay. This is how the typical fork and join framework use. We have provided fork and join framework in JDK 7, but unfortunately, people have not came up with such a good results. They are saying that, no man, not working so nice. We are not able to achieve the parallelism so well because there was a problem. The fork and join framework, which has been given in JDK 7, actually, it has a lot of mathematical aspect left. Okay. So it is too tedious for the people to actually go and derive all the mathematical aspect, how many threads to create, how many processors to see, okay, how to divide your data set, what data set to divide. There are too many complications. That's why what we have done in JDK 8 is that we have taken our own fork and join framework and we have made something called parallel stream. Okay. So parallel stream actually don't do anything. It just do fork and join. So whatever the thing we have discussed from the last 5 slides, it is just that. It takes your array, it breaks the array into multiple Go, it will give it to all the sub-process or sub-task to the different threads or different core. They will finish the work, with work stealing algorithm, and then they will combine the result. Okay. So just adding a dot parallel into the stream, I will actually do all this thing for you, which I'll show you very soon. Just hold on. So I'll take more questions. So introduction of parallel stream in JDK 8, what it has built on FNJ framework. FNJ was not so easy to use, but in JDK 8, you can just say filter. Okay, if someone who is not very much comfortable with the streams nomenclatures and how we write, we will discuss that actually. I was knowing that there can be few people like who have seen the streams kind of API first time, but I'll come back into that. So just you have to add dot parallel, and parallel will take care of all this thing. Okay. So it's a magical that we do a lot of background work for this, but unfortunately it is not so magical. If you are just going and put dot parallel blindly, you are definitely going to see a degradation into the result because there are so many complications. I will explain you a few complications which you have already understood. So these are the consideration always not in the parallel stream when you are trying to achieve something into the parallel. Now let's see. This slide will explain you all. Splitting of the source is important. It is very easy to split something like array or the array list, but do you think that if I should have given you that array into a linked list, the first array, and I should have told you that add all the elements of a linked list, you should have split it? So anyone who advocate to yes that yeah, I should have split the linked list? Actually no, because going into the middle of the linked list is not so easy. You have to traverse each and every element to reaching into the middle of the linked list. Okay, it is not just like the array list. Okay, total number divided by 2. How you will reach to the middle of the linked list? You have to traverse all the element and you have to reach. So linked list, not a good source to split. It's not a good idea to apply any kind of parallel theory onto the linked list. Array list, good enough. Arrays, very good. Primitive arrays like integer and all, awesome actually. Non-primitive wrapper classes like bigger integer, long double. Good, but not as awesome as the primitive data like int and float. Okay, because we know that locality problem. I have discussed this long back. I will discuss it again. Tree data structure, kind of okay. We have seen one example of tree. Okay. It can give you sometimes better result. Sometimes it may not give you better result. Okay, so first thing when you are looking to put dot parallel, I have to look the data stream, that what is the way my data is coming out. Is the data really a splittable data? If not, then forget. You cannot just apply the parallel stream over it. And that was the reason that in the starting of the talk, someone have said that we are seeing more cores get added into the GPU, but not into the CPU. Okay, because the way GPU behaves, actually, GPU always works with primitive data, and it works off immense amount of array data, right? So primitive array, int array, float array, these kind of data which GPU deals with. And these kind of data, I mean, the cores love to split. Okay, they will be like very excited to split this kind of data. But other data structures which we use in general life, like trees and all, not so good. I mean, so you will not really leverage all the core benefit that much. Okay, so first performance consideration is splitting of the source. Second is very important, that minimum data to get benefit. This is the second question that someone have raised in between. Now, I am showing you this data on the basis of the array element which we have discussed. I mean, the addition one. Okay, so we have splitted up to 50, 500, 5K, 50K, and 500K. 500K means we have not splitted at all. Okay, because the total run size is 500K. Now, if I am running 2 threads, I am getting the same performance like the factor of 1. If I am splitting up to 50, means I am splitting up to the 50 element, and after 50 element, I am starting my sequential operation. Horrible performance, 0.2. Okay. But in between, you can see when I am splitting the data up to 5K element, for 500K run size, I am splitting it to 5K element. You can see 4 threads are giving me almost like 3.2 faster. 8 threads are giving me 5.73 faster, not a bad deal. Even 32 threads are giving me 17 times faster result. I am getting faster result even in 50K. Okay, 50K also 4 thread is not so bad, 8 thread is also not so bad. 32 thread, yeah, 10 times faster with 32 threads, maybe I am wasting some of the threads. But if I'm not splitting the data at all, the result is not so good. And if I'm splitting the data too much, like I am reaching up to 50 element to start my sequential run, you can see you are not getting so much benefit. Your 8 thread is probably giving you 2 times faster result. Your 32 thread is giving you 6 times faster result. So how I get to this data? This data is called analysis. Okay, you actually have to run. There is a method also. There is a formula also given by the Intel. I will show you that. But this is an analysis where you have to sit. Okay, and you have to sit without a tea break. And you have to run with all these data. You have to accumulate the data on your server, and then you have to understand that after what data element I should start the parallel sequencing. After I should start the sequential run. Okay. So how parallel stream actually figure it out? Now you can understand that I have just added dot parallel. I have not added all these bullshit into that, right? So how parallel stream will understand that what is the size I should go for the sequential run? Okay, so parallel stream use the NQ model. The NQ model applies for Intel processor because I believe that NQ model has been given by Intel guys itself. Don't tell me that there is no NQ model. NQ model, Intel. Okay, so the ideal NQ factor, you can see like there are a lot of papers, not maybe a lot of papers, but there are two papers. Okay, so the NQ model actually say that you should look for N into Q. N is the number of elements and Q is the amount of work per item. So number of element is say 5,000 and I am doing addition. So amount of work per item means instruction set. So addition is actually one instruction, add R1 comma R2. Okay. So the number of element is 5,000, 5,000 into 1, which is smaller than 10,000. No need to go for parallel work. Okay. But in place of addition, it should be like something like, say like finding a division or finding a square root. So finding a square root, I think goes 6 instruction, okay, down to the processor. So in that case, actually, if I should have 500 element, if I should have 5,000 element, 5,000 into 6, that will be 30,000. Good to go for parallel work. Okay, good to run for the parallelism. So the NQ model actually tell you that what is your minimum data set. If your data set is smaller than N into Q, don't look for parallelism. It's too small data set to look for the parallel work. Okay. Please tell me again, if you're not clear about what is the value of N and Q, I will explain you again.
Can I explain Q once more?
Yeah, and you understood number of elements. So 500 elements, I am doing addition. So Q, you should think of the instruction set. So can you tell me at the processor level, how much instruction set required to do addition?
1.
So that becomes Q becomes 1. So if you have 500 element, you are doing addition, it is 500 into 1. So can you tell me the number of instruction set required for division?
No, but how is this 10,000 is coming into picture? Basis the number 10,000 is derived?
That is the number that has been given by Intel. Okay. So they just gave you that for this formula that N into Q should be greater than 10,000. Then only you should look for parallelism for Intel machines. Okay.
So whether instruction set can change from architecture to architecture.
Instruction set can change. Yes, so this is. So just one second. Sorry, yeah, I just got a call. This is the instruction set for the Intel architecture. It will definitely change if you will change the processor. Okay, for the AMD, it will be a different architecture, but for the Intel architecture, actually, it will remain the same. Okay, because at the processor level, they do different things like the string operation, different architecture handles it in different way. But this is a kind of model which they have given to make you happy that you can have something. So this is how we apply NQ model to get when I should go for the parallel execution and after what number of element I should look for the sequential operation. Okay. So NQ model gives you an important aspect that is called minimum data to run parallelism. Okay. So because I am running out of time, I definitely want to go more detail into the NQ model and instruction set and all those things, but time is the most powerful thing in the life. So let's move ahead. Locality issue I have already covered, that if you are doing integer array sum and you are doing the wrapper integer array, so int versus integer, you need to be very, very careful. Okay, just don't create integer. This I have talked in session 1 also, if you can see the record. So you can see on the number of 1k element, 10k element and 1 billion element, the difference between the run of integer and int. Okay, so int is running much faster than integer. Okay, and I have actually code for all these things. So definitely I will share that. Okay, because they are big elements, so it will take you another 2-3 minutes if I'll just keep running it. So definitely I'll share the codes and you can run it by your own. And I have already explained that what is the problem with integer. Integer don't go into the contiguous. Integer array will not go into the continuous memory location, just like the int array, because every integer array will have a pointer somewhere else into the memory location. So don't create integer, because then you will have a lot of locality issue. Okay, because the cache cannot really be so happy that it, okay, if I am running the 10th element, I know that next is 11th. Not possible. That is not how the instruction set will go into the memory. Okay, so the caching will not happen into the case of integer, because it is just scattered across your heap, whereas the int can give you contiguous memory location. So be very careful with locality issue. Okay, locality issue can actually kill your performance. Order insensitive operations are also very much required. Okay, so you should be careful where you are applying the parallel. Actually, I will cover this again, because I think people should know the streams and parallel streams to understand this into the detail, but I'll come back to this. Okay, so yeah, I am kind of done. So just to recap you again, from the last to first, locality issue, you should look for the minimum data set. You should look for the benefit from the minimum data set. You should look that your source is splittable or not. If all these conditions you are not getting it, all, not one, if you are not reaching all the conditions, you are not in a good position to apply parallelism. Okay, either it is a parallelism code written by you, or it is a parallelism provided by fork and join, or it is a parallelism provided by parallel stream. None of this will work if you will not consider all these things before running your parallel streams. Okay, so sorry, I have went beyond the time. I am just muting. I will take the question for 2 minutes and then I will stop recording. Please go ahead if you have any questions.
Yeah, Vaibhav, what I learned is that when array allocation happens, it happens at contiguous memory locations. So isn't that the case for complex object, as in, is that the case only for primitives?
Yes, that's the case for the primitive, because there is something called data types we have created new, but you need to understand that what happens that Java, every integer, so if you are creating an integer array, every integer element array have its own entity, right? So how it makes its own entity? It makes its own entity by putting a pointer which will have an entity name and it will have the x and y value. Why you need its own entity? Because in Java, an integer array element itself is an object and you can apply a null operation over it. Right? So I can say that this object is null or not. Please let me know. It will tell you, no, this is not a null operation. So in the first class, in the first session, which is like 2 weeks before, I have clearly told that if you are not really looking for this kind of things, like you are reading a lot of data and you are checking the null and all, always go with the primitive data. Because primitive data, when you are defining into the memory, it will get into easily, it will go to into the operating system level, and OS will nicely design that memory layout into your structure. Okay, but that is not true with the integer array. So maybe in the next class or sometimes I will show you that how okay, let me see if I can draw here, but how to do drawing? Yeah, draw. Okay, so you can definitely see my this. So what will happen is that this is how your array elements are. Okay, when you are creating an integer, and now this guy will point here, and this guy will point here, and this guy will point here, and these guys are separate entity into the memory. Okay, so this is integer element 1. This is integer element 2. Sorry. It's a big mess actually, and we have came up with this actually. So how to stop this?
Yeah, thanks, I've got it.
Okay, you got it right, and you should definitely look for project Valhalla. I will. I am just giving you 1 minute. That value types. In the value types, we have started creating a classes like this, which will just work like a primitive. Okay, so Valhalla project is saying that make things like classes, but work as the speed of primitives. So you can definitely go into the detail of Valhalla project, and you can see there are thousands of, even I think we have a presentation available on our Bangalore Jerk. Okay, so that's by the architect Mark Reinhold. So you can go through it. Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, we have learned something, not a great thing, but we have learned something to make our basics clear for the next class. Be prepared for more detail and more tensed class actually when we will go into the concurrency. We will try to understand how the mutex happens, how the share of variable happens, how the instruction set can be changed. Okay, means if I'm writing int x equal to 5, int y equal to 6, can I make the last instruction first and the first instruction last? So all this reordering of the data, what kind of reordering is applicable on what kind of processor, how Java handles it, how other language, there are thousands of problems. Okay, but let's not think of problem now. We will discuss soon.